Schlotman. Berkowitz. Mr. Balich. We have a quorum. Butler. Rebus. Berkowitz. Balich. Motion carries.
Still on.
Hi, I can't hear you guys.
Try the unmute.
Wait, I hear you now, Julie. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for telling me it's time to go.
You don't have to sit in my lap.
Look at all these things here. Thank you.
There you go.
Hi, how are
Hey,
you? Thank you for
doing-
joining us.
Thank you. We're happy to be here. So the legislative update, like we said last month and again this month, and we'll say the same in August, not a massive amount going on in Washington right now. It's just the nature of the summer schedule. The biggest update is in the House Appropriations front. The House Appropriations Committee has now released all 12 of their spending bills, and 4 of those bills have actually passed out of the House floor. The Senate Appropriations Committee is running a little bit behind the House, which is pretty common. The House almost always moves first on this. Um, for the bills that we have out of the House, the bulk of the funding levels are decreased over last year's, which is just consistent with the top line allocations that the House Appropriations Chairman Tom Cole announced a couple of months ago, as well as consistent with some of the top line spending levels that were agreed to in the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was passed last summer. So appropriations wise, at this stage, the House Appropriations Committee is going to continue to advance their bills out of committee, the ones that haven't already passed the floor. And currently, the House is on schedule to pass all 12 bills out of the House by the end of this month or into the first week in August. Senate side, we're expecting this month they'll begin to release their versions of the bills, which we think will be similar to last year's funding, if not increasing some funding for critical programs. Of course, that'll mean that the House and the Senate will need to conference on the funding levels that they aren't on the same page with. As you know, currently the fiscal year runs until September 30th. It's still highly likely we're going to see at least one continuing resolution going to the end of this calendar year. Given the November elections, there's still a low appetite, for punting the appropriations process into the next calendar year. All of that's to say, we'll continue to keep you updated when the Senate releases their bills. We will send over their top line spending levels and their key funding levels as we sent over for the House's 12 bills. So appropriations is really the big update. The other things that Congress is working on is the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a 1-year authorization for defense activities. We expect that that will pass probably again by the end of the calendar year. That's one bill that Congress needs to pass every single year, and they have without fail for every year in which there's been an NDAA. Other bills that we've talked about that I think are going to get punted until at least next year are the Farm Bill, which currently runs through September 30th. We're expecting that there'll be a 1-year, at least a 1-year extension, even though the House has moved on their for their work on it. The Senate has not released the text for their bill, and just given the timing, we think a 1-year extension is pretty probable. That does mean that there is a likelihood next year in the 119th Congress that there could be an opportunity to weigh in with the delegation, should the House and the Senate decide, they might want to modify some of the things that they were talking about this Congress. As soon as we know the fate of the Farm Bill of this year, we'll let you know. Additionally, they're also likely going to extend for at least 1 year the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA, which is the big labor and workforce and training bill. The House has passed their version of WIOA. The Senate Help Committee, which has jurisdiction over WIOA, has actually just held their first hearing on WIOA reauthorization this Congress not too long ago. So I think, again, similar to the Farm Bill, there's just a lot of action that needs to happen and not a lot of legislative days, until we hit the 119th Congress. With that, I'll pause. Brett, is there anything you'd like me to add or anything I left out?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. You did a good job summing up what's going on in Washington. I'll just add a couple things. The House recently marked up and passed out of committee the Water Resources Development Act legislation, and the Senate passed theirs out of the Senate EPW earlier in the year, and so they'll conference those at the end of the year. That bill is the authorizing bill for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which has projects and programs all over the United States. The other thing that I would add is that we will continue to send updates on federal grant programs as they come out. A lot of grants, because of when legislation was signed into law at the end of last year, started coming out in April, and they will continue to roll out the next several months. We continue to track those and send anything along that has to do with public health and wellness, infrastructure, water, or any other areas that Will County might have interest in, and you'll get those funding announcements as they come out, and we'll continue to keep you apprised of opportunities. Outside of those, I think, Catherine, you covered it with the appropriations process, Farm Bill, and the like. Thanks so much.
Brett and Catherine, two things. In the Farm Bill, the wetlands, there's a lot of concern, especially with the Farm Bureau here with rights to private landowners. Is there any discussion regarding that?
I will say, Julie, of all the topics that we've heard in conversations with offices on that committee and the committee leadership, as well as many of the trade press that cover the Farm Bill, a lot of the bigger macro issues that were touched on were the SNAP program, the conservation commodity reimbursements, and issues tied to those areas. We heard less on private land ownership, but that doesn't mean those conversations aren't happening. So we can look more into this. But I would say from what we've seen and heard covered, there's been less of a focus on that, but we can look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. And then we want to keep our eye on the transportation issues with the push for larger trucks, heavier trucks. I know they're always They have a lot of lobbyists pushing for that. So that's one of our greatest concerns here as well.
Yeah, and I know, I believe in the past, Catherine sent you some updates on that legislation that typically gets introduced to allow exemptions for some of those larger truck sizes and weights. And I believe some of those bills are live in this Congress as well. Usually, where you see that legislation moving is in the surface transportation bill, which I think we've talked about in the past. That's the 5-year bill that was passed in 2021 and then will be up again in 2026. And so we will certainly have an opportunity to weigh in on the issues around that, the safety issues around that. And then occasionally you'll also see these bills be included in the appropriations bill, which we were talking about earlier. We have not seen that that language on exemptions were included in these bills, but again, we've only seen the House text, and typically the language gets included in the explanatory materials which accompany the text. So we'll be on the lookout for that. Again, we have not seen or heard that those will be included in the annual appropriations bills. Typically, there is a lobbying fight on both sides of that in the surface transportation bill, but we'll make sure we're tracking that for you. We understand that's a concern for the county.
Okay, thank you. And when do you start reaching out to the different departments for the
For the federal agenda. I believe that we don't have a set date that we typically reach out. I believe we'll probably aim for September or October. We will make sure when we do that we will keep you and Kim and Judy in the loop for that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions? Or okay, let's see. Dan, let me turn you on. There we go. Thank you, Kim. Dan?
Well, okay, thank you. So on the Farm Bill Act, I noticed that they were thinking about taking out funding, extra funding for hemp farmers. What is the reason for that? I mean, it's such an important industry, especially even for environmental reasons, for bringing back brown sites. I mean, what is their position? Why did they do that, or why are they refusing it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. And my understanding of what the changes were towards the hemp laws was tied to, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, but was tied to some of the I think it's called Delta 8, some of the extracts from the hemp plant that are being sold in stores and maybe don't have the labeling that that members of Congress are supportive of. And so it is my understanding that what was changed to the hemp law is because of getting these extracts from different parts of the hemp plant. We could get you more information, but that was my understanding, and I think you're correct. They were making some changes to an industry that's grown significantly over the last several years, and there's been a significant amount of lobbying on all sides related to hemp production. So I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for. You've heard as well on what was leading to that change, but that was my understanding of they were trying to limit what hemp could be used for, the parts of the plant that could be used.
So are we talking about for like medicinal purposes? Like this is interfering with the pharmaceuticals, and they don't want to compete, or is that it?
Again, I think going back to what I said, I'm not an expert on this specific issue. I think Catherine, myself, or KP, we can look and try to find and understand this a little bit better. But I think it was tied to that. KP, maybe you have a little more information on this issue.
Sure. Hi, Dan. KP here. Brett is right. There are ways to chemically change what is traditionally hemp, CBD, non-psychoactive, using chemical reactions, et cetera, to make hemp more psychoactive. So it would be more like THC or medicinal marijuana. So there's been a lot of changes or the ability to make changes in the compound, hemp compound, where, like Brett said, Delta H, which is psychoactive, has been derived from what you and I know as regular hemp, which, as you agreed, was really important for the farming community and others. So that's what they're trying to address, is the transition of what we would call regular hemp into psychoactive compounds.
So that they're trying to provide funding for regular hemp, but not for the psychoactive or whatever.
Correct. Yeah, what they're trying to do.
Okay, so there's a
is-
possibility that hemp farmers still could get support for their, okay. Well, that's good
Absolutely.
news.
Yes.
That's
yes.
good news. And then just on another level, I know that the president and the Foreign Relations Committee deals with treaties, but what is the general feel for Congress as far as the WHO's pandemic treaty?
I think we'd have to get more information on that to get you an answer. I don't know off the top of my head what. I haven't heard any updates on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being with us today, Brett and Catherine, and send that info our way when you get it regarding the hemp, and maybe we'll see you at NACO. It's coming up.
All right. Have a happy 4th of July, everyone. Enjoy some good food and time with family and friends. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great 4th.
All right. Bye.
Next is our state legislative update, and I am so excited to be able to introduce Ann and Matt. They're here with us today from Max Strategies. So please come up, introduce yourself if you would. And the floor's all yours, but hit your button there so I can turn on your microphone. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
All right. Good afternoon, Ann Schaefer. Glad to be with you.
And Matt Murphy, glad to be here in person and out of Springfield for a little while.
Okay, would you like to give us any last minute details that might have occurred? I know I took you on the side and brought up a couple things that we have no control over. There was one other thing, the House Bill 4488. And that's the codifies nursing home voters with the ability to cast ballots. I know there's a lot of concern, but is that a done deal as well?
I'd have to take a look at that specific
Okay.
bill. We can see if we can look it up while we're here. But the
4488.
generally there's election matters are dealt with in what they'll call an omnibus bill, and there was an elections omnibus bill this year, and that to the extent that measure would have moved, it would have moved in the elections omnibus bill. But yeah, we can take a look at that and see if we can get you an update on that maybe before we go. But no, glad to be back here in person. We haven't been able to be here. Obviously, we've been in Springfield most of the sessions this year for your hearings. And so we're grateful for the opportunity to be here. And it would, as you know, session ended in late May, and Ann will kind of walk through a little bit about how things went down in Springfield globally in a little bit. But I just wanted to kind of remark on what I thought, for us, for our first session working with all of you, we were really grateful for the opportunity to do that. We felt like the opportunity to communicate was really good. I feel like, whether it was texts, phone calls, emails, many of you coming down for lobby day to Springfield and kind of being in the trenches with us, or us coming down for the the Will County Legislator breakfast. I feel like the communication has been good, and I hope you all agree. We view ourselves as your eyes and ears in Springfield, and we we really take that seriously, and we want to make sure we understand the issues that are at the forefront of your mind as a board, and that we are advocating on your behalf effectively as a board in Springfield. And so as part of that process, one of the things we started out at the beginning of session working on was setting up our bill tracking process and how we would identify bills of interest to you as the county and report back. And so through collaboration with you, we ended up identifying search terms and bills and so forth that resulted in about over 100 bills being tracked on a weekly basis throughout session, as progress did or did not occur on those bills. And that can be a little bit unwieldy, but again, I think it's helpful for you to see everything that's going on, and that's out of 9,000 bills that are down in Springfield, that we try to winnow it down as best we can. Over 100 is still a lot of reading material. Those reports are dozens of pages long in some cases, but we feel like it's important for you to see the issues that we know would affect how you operate as a county. So and we look forward to honing that process as we move forward too. But all in all, we really felt like from our side of this relationship that we had what we needed from you to be able to represent you effectively in Springfield. We feel like we did that, and eager to hear any feedback or thoughts. But before we get into any of all of that, I just wanted to turn it over to Ann to kind of run through what session was like at a more global level this year, because it was an interesting session.
Thanks, Matt. So as yet another measure of our communication with you, we provided to you a lengthy end of session report, about 9 pages or so. So again, speaking of a lot of reading material, I know there's a lot in there, but just to give you a few highlights. So as you know, the legislature started its spring session January 16th. They had the goal of ending by May 24th. They went a few days over that and ended about 5 a.m. on May 29th. It took them a few extra tries in the House to actually pass a budget, but they did pass that budget. They did resolve things for the year. And we laid out for you the overview of what that looks like. It was, as they call it, a balanced budget. It did put some more money into a rainy day fund. The last few years, they've had excess money that they put into extra payments on the pension. They didn't go quite that far this year. As Matt made reference to, it's an election year. And so that really changes the way that everybody looks at all these decisions they have to make. Are they going to get local criticism on the basis of some of these things? And so when it comes to some of the substantive topics, they were quick to set some of those aside. So there will be some items that they did not address this session that we think they will bring up later on. As it goes to the budget, they tried to kind of keep everybody happy. They tried to do a few things here and there. The governor had come out with his budget address in February, and he had laid out some revenue enhancements that he had wanted. And by and large, they did pass those. They took out the grocery tax at the state level. They did give local authorization to enact that if municipalities so choose. I don't want to bore you with all of the details. There's a ton in there, I know, but I think those are the key highlights. We also go to the step of putting in the bill numbers and links and everything in this report so you can pull them up if that's of use to you throughout this too. And we laid out what each of those revenue enhancements are that they included. There are some who feel like next year is going to be a tougher budget year. They had to go add extra revenues this year as their budget has been increasing, as costs have been increasing, and they may not necessarily have that opportunity to do so as easily next year. Illinois has been doing fairly well actually during COVID, between higher than expected revenues coming in and between federal dollars coming in from COVID relief aid. And as those dollars are expiring, things are expected to get just a little bit tighter. As I made reference to, there are quite a few areas of legislation that they talked about a little bit, but have pushed off. And so there may be much more momentum to move some things later this year or early next year. So in the fall, there's a 2-week veto session. This year it will be November 12th through 14th and November 19th through 21st, so 2 weeks in a row. And the goal of that is to handle any vetoes that the governor may issue, although it's a little bit more rare that a governor of the same party as the supermajorities in the legislature would issue too many vetoes, but there have been a few. Legislators also like to take the opportunity of that time to try to pass other legislation or at least advance it. And then next year, the new General Assembly class will be inaugurated on Wednesday, January 8th. So again, after the elections, the lawmakers sometimes are inclined to have a small session in that window and again, try to advance some things before those new lawmakers come into office. So that could potentially be January 2nd through 7th. And so anytime you have an opportunity for there to be more lawmaking happening, we want to be vigilant as to what they might be bringing up in those timeframes. And if there are going to be any type of packages or bigger items that are ushered through in a shorter time frame. So those are a few of the key highlights that I wanted to point out to you, and I'll turn it back over to Matt to talk about some specific legislation.
So as we look forward and we talk about legislative agenda for you and things at the state level for you as a Will County to be concerned about, the issue that seems to be flashing bright warning lights, the brightest is transit. Mass transit has a what they're calling a fiscal cliff of $750 million. Coming again, federal money, as Ann referenced, falling off and needing to be replaced. You've had the interruption of service due to COVID. You've had the change in work due to COVID. The whole system was built on, people, the spoke and wheel model of people coming from all over the suburbs into the central business district downtown 5 days a week. And that's just not happening anymore and probably isn't likely to again. So you've got an infrastructure, transit infrastructure model that frankly needs improvement and needs maintenance significantly without the regular ridership that you had previously to try to pay for it. Add in the fact that, with changing business models, people are looking to people work differently, and they're looking for different things out of mass transit. So in addition to the massive expense of funding the current infrastructure, to the extent that you would want to try and meet this new need, this new demand for particularly suburbanites who might go from suburb to suburb instead of into the central business district, you're looking at a significant amount of money. Now, the way that the transit governance model has been set up over 50 plus years is a sort of a balance of power between the suburbs and the city and Cook County. And to the extent that these transit agencies are looking for money from the state to deal with this cliff, the state is saying back, what sort of efficiencies are you going to provide in terms of governance? How are you going to change your model in a way that justifies an investment? And what I think is really, really important for you to think about is how you protect your constituents in that process. Because right now on the RTA board, Will County has a vote. Kane County has a vote. DuPage has a vote. So there is guaranteed suburban input, and particularly on behalf of your county. There is really no way of knowing at this early juncture what that new governance structure might be. And, over time, back in the day, the suburbs were predominantly represented by Republicans in Springfield, and the city was represented by Democrats. And this power structure, this balance, reflected that they needed to share that power to get something through Springfield. The suburbs are dominated by Democrats in the legislature now, just as the city is. And it's, I believe, important to share with your elected officials in Will County. And you have very prominent, very senior, well-positioned legislators representing this county. But one of the things you're positioned to do on behalf of all of your constituents is share your concern with them that on this issue, I need to make sure you're a suburbanite first and a member of the party second, because otherwise you run the risk of a consolidation of this governance power, maybe in Cook County or in Chicago, in a way that is detrimental to the interests and benefit of the people you all represent, irrespective of what party you are from here in Will County. So this is coming quickly, this issue. There will be hearings coming up. Next Tuesday, there will be one in the Blandick building. These are Senate, they might be joint, but at least Senate Transportation Committee hearings. July 9th, downtown the Blandick building. July 24th in the Cook South suburbs, there will be another one.
Which
Uh,
suburbs, Cook?
Well, they don't
South or
indicate yet,
South.
but the south
South
suburbs of Cook.
suburbs?
Yeah, they're trying to move this around the area a little bit. They mentioned a hearing in DuPage, Will, and Kendall set for August 8th.
Coming up
Again,
fast.
don't know the location on that yet, but we'll keep an eye on that. And then for Kane and McHenry, there's another one thereafter. So again, as we look forward to next year, and we have kind of counseled that there's a lot of different things you can weigh in on as a county board to the General Assembly in Springfield. But what they need your guidance on most is what you need to represent Will County and their shared constituents best. This is the type of thing that fits right into that wheelhouse where, you can go to them, and this is an area to lean in on. So we would encourage that in the coming weeks and months. And if, we wanted to set up meetings or whatnot with your Springfield legislators to sort of walk through some of this, or maybe get some of their feedback on this issue generally, we'd be happy to participate in that. But
I think that would be a good idea. Kim, would you like to, what are your thoughts about that? I think if we were to have some time with our legislators to at least be prepared to be more effective to provide that feedback.
And look, yeah, we can, collectively determine, what the interaction looks like. Maybe it's a couple board members and a couple staff with a given legislator, or, it doesn't have to be anything all that formal, but I think it is important that they know that this is an issue of significant concern to you, and that, you want to stay in touch with them on it and hear their take on it.
And just so I understand it, so, I mean, for a good part of my life, I lived in public transportation. I took the buses, I took the Ls, all over the city for a long time. I've seen everything. This, I think what's important here is this not only can impact us financially, but this can also impact the service, correct? Because I would imagine if the structure changes, then our type of service will change as well. That may or may not be a good thing, but when that concept changes,
Yeah.
how do we visualize it?
Well, if you lose oversight, you run the risk of your service needs being subjugated to those who have the oversight responsibility. And I think that's a big part of the concern. Look, if there isn't as much money as everyone would like, whether it's federal money, state money, local money, and frankly, you'll probably need all three to really solve this problem. But to the extent that there is not enough money to go around, you just want to be careful that that your needs aren't the ones that sort of get left out when the money runs out.
And could have the scenario where most of the revenue is coming from the suburban areas, but then most of the service is going into the city. And that's not balanced either. To have all the funding come from the suburban areas. So,
Well, there will certainly be significant funding from both city, suburban Cook, but also from the Cowlers. And any of these, groups of taxpayers that are putting in significant money, they all deserve to have, a fair and equal voice in the process of how, those dollars collectively are spent and the product that they get back in terms of their transit services.
so Matt, how can we be most effective? You mentioned a couple dates. If we attend these dates, August 8th, if the public attends those dates, how can we tell them to be more effective?
Yeah, I think those are coming up, but I think listening, if to the extent you have the ability to, you may not, the local one, I think it'd be great if there were board members on August 8th who could make it, a good bipartisan group of board members from this board sort of showing up in force to say, hey, this is an issue that we're all concerned about and paying attention to, I think would be great.
So I haven't seen any notices regarding.
Nope,
that,
this is
but-
all pretty new, but
Okay.
we'll share that information so that
Thank you.
you've got it. Because again, I don't currently even know the location.
Thank you. I'll watch for that. And
Mark, did you have a question?
let's see. Oh, he's 4. Oh, there we go.
Thank you guys for your work on this. I know it probably was a big lift, but one thing that I want to mention, or at least go on record for the other board members here regarding the fiscal cliff with public transit. My district has the PACE bus facility right off 143rd Street. The 143rd Street expansion project out in Plainfield has started. They broke ground on it. Likely going to open up westbound traffic into my side, and then from my side, open up eastbound traffic into the county. So I would really hate to see, our oversight ability, taken away by a restructuring, especially with such a large, operation inside of my district. So if I come on the 8th, maybe we can work beforehand to prepare some sort of statement that's really buttoned up and, that I could share. So
Yep.
I would love
Happy
to
to
go
help.
on the 8th, and I appreciate you guys sharing this information.
You bet. Yeah, you bet. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a few questions. Kind of, I hit on one of them, so I get an idea that it is associated with one of my concerns. But so when we talk about the restructuring, are we just talking about downsizing? Are we talking about propping up a system, waiting for the numbers to come back? What do you
Yeah,
got?
that's a good question. I don't know that anybody really knows. And I look, I think there is a sincere effort, on the part of the Senator Villavalum, who's the transportation chair in the Senate, vice chair of transportation in the House, Representative Evadina Delgado, Representative Leader Cam Buckner also in the House. There and on the minority side, Senator Don DeWitt out in the St. Charles area. They want to get this right. It's a very significant issue, and it's a lot of money, and it's really important to the quality of life of a lot of people.
So-
I just don't know. I don't know that they're as far enough down the road to say how they think they can pull this off.
So we're kinda talking about two different things here, right? So we're talking about when you address that there's a big issue and they're going to have to, maybe reconstruct the system to make it fit today's needs. And then there's the other one that Mark had brought up about giving more power to the counties and taking it away from the townships.
Yeah.
Now, it was my understanding that we didn't have to worry about that because a lot of townships don't want that. And so they didn't have the votes for it and they weren't even close on it. What is your assessment of that?
Well, there are two different issues, right? So one is the physical reconstruction or modification of the transit system. And that one, it starts with improvements, upgrades that are needed on the existing. beyond that is the potential expansion of more suburb to suburb mass transit if we wanted to try and meet that need. So that's on one half of this. The other half of what this restructuring might look like is board governance. So you have the CTA, you have PACE, you have Metra, you have the RTA. So there are a number of people in Springfield that are saying that's too many organizations, that's too much overhead, and we want all of you transit boards to tell us, the state, how you're going to consolidate and save money from your governance structure, which, I mean, is that a lot of governance? It is, but there's a reason it's there. And relative to the overall budget, you're probably not going to get a ton of savings by consolidating those boards down
And
all that extensively.
you mean to have it controlled by the county?
Well, to have maybe one central board,
Yeah.
maybe one global transit board, instead of those four, having it be one large one.
So again, you made mention about, improving and, building on a system that's deteriorating or dying because it's not being used. So are we more talking about trying to increase our technology or because of, using electric or gas? Is that what this is? Is that what they're talking about? Like making investment in our infrastructure? I mean, we got more infrastructure than we need. Why are we going to make, an investment in that?
No, Dan, what they want to do is,
I just want to hear from him. Just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why do we need to put more money in it? That's why
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think it's a little bit of all of the above, right? So CMAP was asked to do a study of this a few years ago. They released a report. They came up with a few different recommendations and scenarios. And again, it's largely driven from the $730 million fiscal cliff, which is not just a one-time thing. It's every year they have a shortfall of $730 million. So how do we right-size the system so that we have enough funding? And then also, how do we address the changes in ridership, the changes in transportation technology, the changes in all of these different pieces as they fit together? A lot of riders and consumers want greater service. They want more, buses. They want more accurate times when they're going to show up. They want all of these things, which all cost money. At the same time, how much will they increase fares? How much can people bear to increase fares before ridership goes down? So all of those considerations, I think, are part of this. So the lawmakers took that CMAP study and they largely picked one of the models and they introduced some legislation. So Senator Villavalum, Representative Delgado, Representative Buckner, as Matt made reference to, each introduced legislation as sort of a starting point for these conversations. And now Senator Villavalum is moving that into a hearing process. So he wants to make sure that there's hearings all throughout the region and each one has slightly different topic to it so that they can be hearing from both experts and stakeholders throughout the area on those topics and be addressing each of those pieces. So it's a little bit TBD, right?
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to your updates
Okay.
on this topic.
I'll be looking forward to that TBD getting fleshed out because this is a thorny
Yeah.
problem for sure.
and Matt, I think it was either Pace or Metra. I should look it up, but they just announced just the other day that our ridership here is back to pre-COVID levels. So it's going up and it's doing well. Mark mentioned their terminal that in his district. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. It's I wish Naperville had one of those, but it's just fantastic. Yeah, well, we don't, yeah, the trains come in and leave, but that's about it. But so we're getting good news.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, that's another reason why we need to really make sure that we have control in our area for what we need and we can keep our priorities at the forefront
Yeah.
and they don't get diluted.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank
and when
you.
you think about pace, I mean, that's, you don't have to lay track for that. You don't have to update expensive rail cars. I mean, it's bang for the buck wise, that may end up being a pretty good return on the collective taxpayer transit dollar. So,
They've got
but that's
their
all part of the equation, right?
Yeah, and they've got their special routes. They've got a great fleet of electric buses. I mean, it's really good. It's a great trend. So
And one last thing I think as we look forward, it's not our job to tell you how to resolve a local issue or how to feel about a local issue or any issue for that matter. But, the 143rd, the quick take issue, there, at some point, I assume there will need to be legislation on quick take on that regard, however this project moves forward. So it was encouraging this year. I think there is good support from county legislators in Springfield to be helpful whenever we're ready on that in whatever form that looks like. So, whenever that's ready to move forward, I think as we move prospectively and look prospectively, that's something that I think we'll be prepared to be able to help you out with.
On that topic there,
Hold on, Steve.
on the 143rd Street topic, the quick take is stopped as of now, right?
That's correct. Yeah, no legislation passed this session.
Because our attorneys believe that the county's gonna not win their lawsuit. So, and they feel the opposite, so it's up to the judge.
Yep. And whenever that gets worked out, we'll be here
And
waiting.
there's been at least 4, probably 5 vetoes already by the county executive saying that we should move ahead with quick take anyway. So, we have that problem here. So I just hate to see it at the state level also because despite what was said this morning, people are complaining they're not getting even close to what their property's valued for. What they're being offered. That isn't the
Yeah.
final
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
it's frustrating to hear
Oh.
people say, you have a lawsuit, they're coming and bugging me. They're threatening the way
Whoops.
they explain
I
things.
accidentally have it all.
So, I'm just glad you guys are stopping.
Sorry, Steve, I got nervous and started poking around here. Okay, Matt, thank you for,
Our pleasure.
that's a very important topic for us and I look forward to getting more information on those events. And the other thing too is I appreciate you guiding us and getting us more familiar with this. There was, I think, not last month, but the month before, we kind of mentioned, the website, the legislation website, and it's hard to navigate. And you mentioned you could do maybe a little tutorial in the future for board members.
Sure.
I think that would be a great idea. And
Yeah.
I'd love
Happy to
to.
do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The better you
Um,
can navigate that thing, the easier it makes my life. So.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So I'd like to have that come up
Yeah.
in the near future. It doesn't have to be, and I guess we're switching these out again, so we need time to get acclimated to, I guess it's an iPad, so hopefully it's bigger than the last one. That was it,
Very good.
smallest
Yeah.
iPad. Okay, so was there anything else besides? Yeah.
No, I think that covers it. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or anything else, but again, I really felt it was a very good first year. Found a nice rhythm working with the board and look forward to continuing to work with you guys on behalf of your constituents.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we will be taking a look at our state legislative agenda soon. We want to start earlier than we
Yeah.
did last year, so we're not so frantic. And one quick question too, with the veto lame duck session, did anybody have questions about that or about how it works? Dan, are you all good with that? Oh,
Got it. 12th to
Okay.
the 14th and 19th to the 21st.
Usually there is, not this year.
okay.
2 weeks before Thanksgiving, exactly. Yeah.
All
My
right.
birthday's around Thanksgiving, so I.
There we go.
I usually kind of know how November shakes out when it comes to what week is the holiday and.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time and it's great to be here with you and
Glad to be here in
Perfect.
person. Thanks very much.
you're welcome.
Take care. You bet.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they were just in areas.
Thank you. Okay, and then next up, we've got old business and we don't have any old business. So next up is new business. Well, so walk through on to session report, moving forward with Beto lame duck session. Review of our state legislative agenda. Does anybody have any comments regarding the agenda? I did follow up with, Jackie Haas regarding the matter with the firefighters' employment, and there has been no movement in committee. So that particular item did not go anywhere, so I want to make sure that we keep that in here. And did anyone have any comments about any of the things in the agenda? Okay, so I think we all want to take out our copy, start taking a look at it, maybe follow up with any legislators if it's of particular interest with you, because we want to go through this step by step to find out, can it be removed? Does it need to be kept on the agenda? And we want to take that opportunity to also update it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing? Okay, great. Next is new business, other new business, none. Any public comment? Any public comment? Last call for public comment. And announcements, reports by chair. I don't have any announcements. Executive session, Mary? No executive session. And may I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion, I'll give you that.
All right. Previous row? All in favor?
Aye. None of us are opposed.
And our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 6th. See you there. Thank you.